Hi, everyone. This is Nithya Ruff. I head the open source program office at Amazon, and it's my pleasure to be here today with you at the Python Maintainer Conference. The topic I want to talk to you about is what every one of us wants to work on and believe in, which is a community where everybody belongs. And Python community especially has been doing a really nice job of creating such a community. And I'd love to share some of my thoughts on why it's important to create such a community and some of the elements of what a belonging and an inclusive community looks like. So let's get started. Just to give you my background, I have been working in tech for the last 30 years, mainly on the West Coast and now certainly on the East Coast. And during the 80s, for sure, we didn't have a vocabulary around diversity and inclusion and equity. You basically fit into the company and you had to work hard to not stand out or be different. It was important to kind of really be, assimilated, if you will. And it was not until the 90s when I joined Silicon Graphics that I actually started seeing a focus by companies and communities on the fact that we are all different. We come from different backgrounds, different life experiences, and how do we celebrate that? How do we harmonize and get people to work together? And so I was really excited to be a part of the SGI Executive Diversity Council. And I must admit, it was in the 2000s and 2020s is when we are really seeing a full-blown acknowledgement of the fact that diversity is important. Not only do we need to celebrate people and all of their differences, but to include them in the community and in the company, and to help them feel a sense of belonging and really impact and innovate and be creative as a result of feeling completely included. And it's important to actually come to this place of feeling of inclusion and the importance of inclusion and belonging, because we live in a world that is very diverse. There's not just the global dimension of people coming from different countries, color, gender, but there are so many hidden and visible differences that we all possess. And we need to honor that. We need to work with that. And leadership in the 21st century is about cultural agility and working with people of all kinds and bringing out the best in people from a lot of different backgrounds. The vocabulary that evolved in the diversity and inclusion world is, I think in the beginning, we started recognizing that we have bias. Some are unconscious, some are conscious. We started talking about diversity, the fact that we're all different. And it wasn't until Werner Myers brought the term inclusion that we realized that it's not just enough to stop at diversity and creating a diverse organization or acknowledging that diversity exists, that we really need to then help the diverse community truly be included and heard and valued, and hence being able to contribute and participate in companies and communities. And if you take it further, belonging comes when you're not only included, but you feel safe, you feel valued, and you actually feel you can be yourself and you can contribute to the community. Inclusion needs to be defined in terms of the fact that it is a basic human need. We all want to feel safe, we want to be heard, we want to be valued in whichever organization or community we are a part of. We want to be welcomed. And that allows us to truly then be ourselves and be able to contribute to the organization and the community. And it is a basic human need. So when we go and think about what are the consequences of people who are not being included, you find that the organization, the community loses so much of the value of that person's participation, because when that person is not included, they disengage, they leave the company or the organization, they feel a sense of exclusion and bias, and the organization loses the benefit of their unique perspective and their life experiences that could shape the innovation that we do and the work that we do to be stronger and better. And on the flip side, when people are included, you find that the benefits are many. You feel a sense of loyalty to an organization that values you and includes you. Your innovation juices start flowing. You are creative because you are no longer in a state of worry and a state of feeling judged. You feel comfortable collaborating. You feel comfortable celebrating others and yourself. You don't just hold all the knowledge to yourself. You're engaged in the organization. You want to give back. You want to advocate. And you bring unique perspectives to the table. And you realize you're there for a purpose and to bring your unique perspectives to the table. And you grow. And this is the state that we want everyone to feel when they are a part of a community. And it doesn't come organically, it doesn't come easily. Leadership has to work to create a culture of community and inclusion and belonging. All of us who are members of the community have to work at it. We have to examine our culture, our values, our behavior. Who are we rewarding? Who are we rejecting in the community? What actions do we take? What is the nature of our structure and governance in this community? Are we doing the right things all along the journey to make sure people are welcome and included? And it's not just a check off the boxes type of an exercise, but a true examination of the culture of the organization. Leadership, in fact, plays a very, very big role. They set the stage, they set the culture, if you will, through how they role model inclusion, how they reward people, how they deal with people who are detractors of the community, who diminish the community or who create fissions and breaks in the community, if you will. And leaders are accountable. They own this issue, and they own the fact that culture needs to come from the top, and they need to set the right tone. And they create the right organizational values, and they codify some of these values and make sure that the culture knows and the team knows the values that are celebrated in the organization. And leaders need education too. Leaders are not born knowing how to create inclusive teams. And for the longest time, especially leaders who came from the 80s and 90s, were not taught this or did not have to do this. And so it's a new learning for leaders, and particularly in the age of COVID and beyond, when we have very hybrid and virtual teams, we really need to learn how to create an inclusive organization through, first of all, being self-aware, curious, open, culturally agile, understanding, how to work with different cultures, and really overtly advocating for diversity and creating a trusting and safe environment where people can be themselves and can express themselves in the organization. And as I mentioned before, it's everyone's responsibility to create an inclusive environment. And it's in those daily, everyday practices that inclusion really manifests itself in an organization, whether it's in a meeting or how you conduct yourself on Slack or in any kind of communications, in some of the processes, policies that you create. You need to make it a competency that is celebrated and rewarded and respected. And it needs to be built in from onboarding all the way to how someone exits an organization and how you celebrate the results or the outputs of that person. This is from the Linux Foundation's Diversity and Inclusion Study that was done in 2021. And I wanted to bring this up because it still shows that there's so much work to be done. While we've all developed a great vocabulary around it, and we are much more aware of the need for diversity and inclusion, we know the business benefits of diversity and inclusion, and we know how good a community functions when you have inclusion, there are still a lot of barriers and challenges to inclusion and belonging. And I would highly recommend reading this survey and downloading this survey because it has some really good practices that it recommends for communities as well as companies to follow. And inclusive leaders really are maintainers, community leaders, and everyone in a community who works hard to welcome new contributors, makes it easy to participate for everyone, honors the code of conduct, provides mentors so that new people can learn better and feel a sense of safety as they learn. And they support a civil discourse in the organization and support building a diverse community, reaching out and supporting a diverse community in the company or community. And leaders also need to measure the outcomes from diversity, inclusion, and community initiatives, make sure that they are reviewing goals, adjusting goals, adjusting practices as they review the results from the diversity, and making sure that the right things are being focused on and the right actions are being put in place. To summarize and to conclude, I want to say we still have a long way to go, but we know what actions we can take. One of the best newsletters and Twitter accounts that I follow is called Better Allies, and they summarize and collect great diversity and inclusion and equity practices across the globe, and they share those practices with everyone. So to me, that newsletter keeps me abreast of some of the best practices that are happening. I would also say every day we need to be actively conscious of things we can do to support someone new or underrepresented, to make sure that we are not being biased, and to also hold people accountable for any bias. And if you're a leader, it's so important to be visible in your support of diversity and inclusion and role model inclusive behaviors. A sense of belonging is really a basic human need and longing. And we need to do everything in our power as community members and community leaders to create such an environment so that people can be safe, valued, and fully engaged and fully actualized, if you will, in being the best self that they can be. So thank you for your time, and hope you have a great Python Maintainers Conference.